Alright, so this is a little bit of a different kind of video than usual. First off, before anything else, this video has spoilers for the manga, and by extension, everything in AOT. At the time of writing this strip, the fan translation just came out about half an hour ago, and the Crunchyroll release is not out yet, so keep in mind that the translation you see in these panels is the original fan translated one, not the official one that Crunchyroll releases. I'll also be loosely discussing the following endings for the sake of comparison: Code Geass, Fate Zero, End of Evangelion, and Tokyo Duelry. One more time, everything here is being spoiled, so you got a couple seconds to get out while you can. Alright, we good? Alright, let's get into it. Alright, first off the bat, would I say I liked the ending? I don't know yet. I'm really mixed on it. This is not a review, this is a first impressions pretty much. I wouldn't say that I love it, but I also wouldn't say that it's a Game of Thrones situation. Maybe I'm in denial though. I can say at the very least that it's not entirely what I expected, but in some ways I did kinda see it coming. But before we talk about any of that, no matter what you think of the ending, don't try and tell me that this isn't the sickest thing you've seen in your life. I will fight you over it. This is the coolest shot in the manga. I love this page. What an absolute chad all the way to the end. Alright, now let's try and organize things a little. Let's start off with something a little less conflicting. The end of the Titans. I told it. I absolutely 100% told that everyone would go back to being human. I'd be lying if I said I 100% understood why this happened, but I knew it was coming. Does it cheapen it? A little, but I don't particularly think so. I feel like titanizing almost every character over the span of like 3 pages would have been a way too abrupt death for most of these people, but at the same time I'd be lying if I said I was a fan of it just instantly being solved. I'm not entirely sure if the reason they turned back is because the hallucigenia is dead or because the founding titan did it, but either way I figured this was what would happen. I always thought we'd have an ending where the curse of Ymir was gone one way or another, and I do think it's at least pretty hilarious that Reiner still can't die. But more importantly than that, I think for the sake of a conclusive ending, it's important that the Titans have to be gone. As long as they still exist, things will just happen again, same events over and over like Kruger said. Whether that's through paths or through every Eldian dying, I always knew one way or another Titans would be gone. The translation between 138 and 139 definitely feels pretty strange though. I hope at the very least the anime will fix that. Maybe it's just chapter length hurting it. The Code Geass ending. Okay, this is a big one. Eren dying to become a martyr. I don't even know where to start, so let's put it like this. I am disappointed that it's a Code Geass situation. I think having it be a straight up contest of ideals is a lot more interesting and a lot more in service of the overall themes of the story. That said, I'd be lying if I said I didn't like this series more than Code Geass. The argument of wiping out humanity versus letting parody die is one of the most genuinely morally gray arguments I've seen in a manga. Is it wrong to wipe out humanity? Yeah, of course. I don't see how anyone can argue otherwise when speaking purely in terms of morality. Is it right to let your friends, family, home, and every member of your race be wiped off the planet? Again, I don't see how most people would just say yes and say they should just accept it. Negotiations were out of the question long before Eren attacked Marley. They were in a situation of committing an atrocity versus letting one be committed against you. It's like the Kiritsugu argument from Fate Zero. Is it right to get rid of the smaller population to save the larger one? If you try to use raw logic, probably yeah, but morality doesn't always end up adhering to strict rules like that. Would you still make the argument of wiping out the smaller number if you were one of the smaller number? Kind of like the trolley argument. What if you had to directly kill them yourself? Would you still make that argument? It's a complicated subject, and I think Eren and Armin worked perfectly as opposing views for this. The problem comes when you realize that Eren planned on being killed. The fact that 80% was wiped out solves the issue of why parody isn't immediately retaliated against and does add some more weight to Eren's decision. I don't understand why Eren would go this far and then just decide to bet the rest of parody's survival on the chance that the 20% won't start and win a war against them. Even if it's just 20%, it's still 20% with a 100-year technological advantage. Eren's character. This is the one I've seen argued about the most. Did this chapter ruin Eren's character? I don't think it ruined it, but I do think it hurt it. Eren's biggest theme of his character has been freedom. He wants to be free of the walls, free to join the Survey Corps, to make his own decisions instead of being dragged along by everyone else. And eventually to make his own decision for what's right for parody, without taking away his friend's freedom to try and stop him, even if they'll likely die trying. I feel confused about where to even start with this, so let's start with the obvious. Was Eren furry? Let's look at what Eren says here. He was going with the flow of events while asking himself what he's doing. Going by this, I don't think he is furry. He saw a future with a good outcome, one where the rest of the world is willing to negotiate with parody, and his friends aren't wiped out in a genocide. Is it out of character for Eren to work towards his outcome no matter what it takes? Of course not. But I do think it kind of hurts the entire characterization if he continued just going for this without understanding what he was even doing. He had no idea how events lined up, he was just trying to work towards that ending, even going as far as distancing himself from Armin and Mikasa just for that ending. He wasn't free, he was just a slave to the outcome. At first I thought maybe he means he went to Marley on his own, but Armin explicitly mentions the knee hit. This is after they fought. And then you combine this with the fact that Dina was sent by Eren in the first place. He's the reason she ignored Bertolt back when they broke the wall. I really disliked this detail. It kind of says to me that Eren was a slave the entire time. He was a slave to his future self's decisions once he gained control of the Founder. This is stupid as hell. Eren didn't need to play 6-dimensional chess by killing his mom via paths. If anything, it's more interesting that by chance it shows that anyone could have become like Eren. Eren just became determined to do all of this as a reaction to what he saw in Shiganshina. It feels like padding out one big reveal one last time for the sake of it. And speaking of controversy, Mikasa. I've had a lot of different thoughts on this scene. My initial thoughts on this scene were really just kind of speechless. Even now I'm kind of struggling to come up with how I would describe it. I really hate to use the term cringe. I don't like that term, but that was initially my thought. Not anymore though. Now I'd use the term kind of pathetic to describe how I initially viewed it. And it is pathetic. He's sitting in the ocean crying about Mikasa. But after having some time to think about it, I can appreciate the intentions of the scene, even if I don't like how it is executed. Let me try and defend it as best I can. The idea here, at least what I think it's meant to show, is fine. Eren never has been and never will be perfect. He's still human even after committing genocide. Eren knows he's going to die, and he's being faced with the regret that a part of him still just wants to live with Mikasa and be happy. He's accepted that he'll die, but that doesn't mean a part of him doesn't still want to live. Armin even calls it awkward in the same scene. He still wants to see the outside world with Armin and to be with Mikasa, which is why he even shows Armin that outside world that they'll never actually get to see together, since this is the closest he'll ever achieve. It's a human reaction even if he hasn't changed his decision. The problem is just that the dialogue here comes off very strangely, and I'm hoping the official translation improves things. The intention is natural and understandable, but the dialogue comes off as whiny as pathetic. The anime could also change it, I guess. Alternatively, maybe voice acting will even fix it some. I guess I could be reading the dialogue wrong compared to how it's supposed to come out, but honestly, if this is accurate and the official translation doesn't improve things, yeah, I don't like this scene. I think it could have been done much, much better. I think a lot of people are also kinda overlooking this part immediately after, though. He knew the Alliance would stop him, but even if he didn't know that, he would have rumbled the world to save parity. I think some people tend to overlook this page. Well, for me, it's one of the more interesting things in 139. It shows that despite this reveal, Eren's morality and his belief in what was best still didn't change. He still would have done the rumbling. I don't think it fixes the problems of the chapter, but I do think it improves it a little bit. That said, I still don't like that he just decided to go for the outcome of the Alliance stopping him and didn't try to use that knowledge to ensure the remaining 20% are rumbled. What I also really dislike is this exchange. I don't want to talk about this too much because I feel like the official translation is going to improve it. This is a joke of a line. I really like the other translation that some people on Titanfall came up with, of him saying, "For turning yourself into a devil for our sake." I think this works a lot better if you just change the line there. The idea of Armin saying, "Yo, thanks for the genocide," is just insane. And the whole thematic idea of saying genocide was the best outcome is dumb at best and worrying at worst. It's like at the end of Gundam, they just said, yeah, you know what, maybe the war crimes worked out after all. I mean, AOT is basically Stin Gundam, but that's getting off topic. Also, this is a very small note, but speaking of Gundam, I've seen these last few chapters compared a lot to Instrumentality from Evangelion, and they are pretty similar in terms of the way they change setting and reflect the characters involved. But the more I think about it, the more I realize how similar this is to new types from Gundam and later Innovators. The whole thing really reminds me of that, and the idea of creating a space where the characters can just understand each other regardless of side or ideal, although I do think the idea of this just coming out of nowhere is pretty strange. Not really an important comparison, just kind of something I thought was interesting. Also, as a side note, what happened with Mikasa's memories? The Founder can't change the memories of Ackerman, so shouldn't Mikasa and Levi both remember Eren on the boat? Or did they just remember it and go along with the plan? I don't get it. Also, where's Yelena? Ymir loves the King. To me, this is the actual worst part of the chapter. The idea that Ymir loved King Fritz and this wasn't just some weird version of Stockholm Syndrome is just... I hate it. You can't seriously be trying to frame Mikasa's love for Eren after he saved her at her worst time And Teen Fritz is tutting out Ymir's ton, having her chased to the death and then forcing her to have children who would then cannibalize her is just the most insane thing I've ever read. It's awful. You could have cut this exchange out and absolutely nothing would be different. It should just not be in there. My guess about what this meant is that Ymir saw a similarity between her own love of the teen, only to be put through hell and wanting to be free, as similar to Mikasa loving Eren, only for him to say he hated her, while she wanted to be free from the supposed Ackerman curse that made them slaves. I guess I kinda get it. I don't like it, but I get it. The more I think about this, the more I hate it. It's pretty disgusting at worst, so let's just move on. Ambassadors. Alright, so I feel like the only reason half these people are ambassadors is because they're main characters. Can I buy them being treated as heroes? Sure, I did that, and I like it. Despite the stuff Annie did to them, she still helped save the last 20% of the world. But why is she an ambassador? I like Annie, but she's been nothing but antisocial the entire series. Why isn't Levi an ambassador? It's because he's tripled, or maybe he just didn't want to be? I mean, I guess he could have just turned it down. Maybe he wanted to stop being a soldier for once. Maybe pull an Uncle Iroh and just open up a shop or something. But I would have liked to see some dialogue from him. What about Tawny? What stills does he have it as ambassador? I don't know, but I don't hate this part, but I do think it's very strange. I think I get it. The ambassadors are them because they're the ones who save the rest of the world. The world sees them as saviors, and the only ones who can be respected enough for the rest of the world to hear them out, but I don't know, something feels weird about it. Everything else, I guess? Alright, so what did I like? I like that Hitch and Rico got one last appearance. Someone go update Rico's wiki page, Yams remembered her after all. I like this transition of Mikasa holding Eren's head into Historia holding her daughter. I like how Dabby just yeets Falto. I like this shot of Levi. Reiner smelling Historia's handwriting was kinda dumb considering how much growth his character has had since the last time he saw her, but I guess it's kind of a funny callback. Still not a fan of him turning back into a simp though. I cannot believe the farmer was actually the father. What an absolute did to Chad. What a legend. We never even got to see his face, but this mad lad just walks in out of nowhere and marries the tween without a word after throwing rocks at her. We all strive to be like this absolute hero. I like how Peach is still a top tier waifu even if she hardly did anything this chapter. As a side note, I'm really unclear about when this last part takes place considering how much older Dabby and Falto looked. I guess a couple years, they looked like late teens here, but they were only 12 in this arc. So, I don't know. I was gonna say I'm surprised they're with Levi and not like back home, but I guess I don't know who else would push his wheelchair since everyone else is dead. Also, where's Yelena? Final thoughts. Was this a good ending? I wouldn't call it a great ending. I don't know if I'd even call it good, but I guess I think it's just fine, average maybe. The idea is okay, but the execution feels bad to me, and there's more than a few plot points that I think are disappointing. Would I still recommend Attack on Titan to people? Yes. Despite the reactions from r/Titanfold and some of the other subreddits, I don't think this is a GOT level disaster. Maybe I'm in denial, but I think I've seen much worse. It didn't make me regret liking the rest, it just made me disappointed for how much better it could have been. I'll be honest, I was never particularly pro ANR theory, although I did really like the theory, and I do think it would have been a little more interesting of an ending. It's very similar to Tokyo Duel Re to me, though to be honest I find the execution of this a good bit better. I mean, at least this didn't have major characters come back to life only to disappear again. Ghosts don't count. It's not the same happy-ish ending with a sudden time skip and the two sides living in relative peace, with the implication that at least some fighting should still continue. They're both endings that I think are fine in concept, but stumble on the execution, although Tokyo Duel Re has much bigger problems than just its ending. Whereas I think Attack on Titan's last arc was pretty solid until it started fumbling around, I want to say 126 or so. Really, as soon as the stuff with Tawny's mom happened, it started to get a little worse for me, but I still had hope. I don't regret reading this manga, and I'll still watch the anime when Season 4 Part 2 airs. CGI or not, I think Mappa's done a great job so far, but until then, thanks for listening to my rambling. It's surreal to think that this series is really over now. I mean, we've got the anime continuing in winter, but still. I remember back when I first watched AOT, it was back in the days when my process for watching anime was either to torrent a new episode or find some sketchy website. I had never actually felt compelled to try Crunchyroll until AOT aired, and I made my account just so I could watch episode 4. I remember the old AOTan controversy from the Tommy subs way back in like 2011 when this was airing, and I still remember it sometimes when I was watching the openings. Maybe I'm just still in denial, but the ending isn't bad enough for me to regret any of that. AOTan Onslaught has lived rent-free in my mind for 10 years, and now I am free. Maybe I'll do a more in-depth video once I've had time to organize my thoughts more. Until then, to you, 2,000 views from now. Thank you for watching. Also, where's Yelena?